The State Board of Education met today to cut tens of millions of dollars from its budget.
These cuts will impact every district and every child in the state.
There is a painful reality, and that is what
we've been reporting on, some pretty drastic cuts that school districts are preparing for.
Bigger class sizes are something that we feel like is probably inevitable.
You have to pile kids in classes, basically.
the focus on tests, many tests.
We need more of our students graduating. We need more of them graduating better prepared.
It seems like things are going to get a lot worse before they get any better.
I think it's time to hit the reset button.
Save our schools! Save our schools!
The State Board of Education met today to make cuts, and those cuts ran deep.
A lot of programs going to be affected.
Budget cuts, forced layoffs.
Educators are so fed up with the way things have been going.
A lot of our teachers feel like they're being picked on.
Children, our students, are the real casualties of this crisis.
We have got to put a stop to the bleeding.
We have to keep going. We have got to get it right.
Educate Oklahoma, presented by Jim Norton Toyota.
It's a tumultuous time for Oklahoma schools. Thanks so much for joining us. We're kicking off a statewide initiative called Educate Oklahoma.
Over the next 2 nights and the weeks and months ahead, we'll look at what's working here and in other states, as well as what's not.
We're also examining the lessons to be learned from a European country with a world-acclaimed education system.
Now, a News 9 poll shows our public schools have plenty of room for improvement. We asked Oklahomans what grade they'd give Oklahoma schools. More people handed out F's than A's, but overall, Oklahomans give our schools a C+. Oklahoma may have scored better if the state spent more money in the classroom.
Nearly 87% of people we surveyed believe it's key to raising the grade. As Aaron Brilbeck reports, instead, schools are forced to do more with much less.
Oklahoma schools took a beating this year with massive cuts in state funding. You can blame an economy crippled by falling oil prices, coupled with years of tax cuts and corporate subsidies. And the problem will likely get worse before it gets better.
That looks great.
Nichols Hills kindergarten teacher Tori Shoecraft puts a smile on her face every morning, trying to make the best of a bad situation. Specifically, the lack of money for schools and for teachers.
It is frustrating, especially when, as teachers and our principal, we are cutting back everywhere.
The state's $1.3 billion budget deficit led to $74.4 million in cuts for public education. For the state's largest district, Oklahoma City,
It was really brutal for our school district. We had to cut $30 million, which resulted in us laying off 208 teachers.
a one-time boost in state aid allowed the district to rehire all but 83 teachers.
We invited a lot of people back, but unfortunately there are people who chose to leave the profession.
When you factor in all spending, federal, county, and state, per pupil spending is consistently rising, but not by much. In November, taxpayers will consider a 1% increase to the sales tax to pay for, among other things, a $5,000 pay increase for teachers. The tax would raise $615 million, but only $378 million would be used for teacher pay increases. The rest would be used for other education programs.
They are willing, if lawmakers at the state capitol can't figure out something else between now and November, they are willing to take one for the team, so to speak, and raise their own taxes, their sales taxes, to the highest in America.
Dave Bond of political think tank OCPA Impact would rather see lawmakers cut unnecessary spending.
The $200 million in subsidies for out-of-state and foreign wind companies, that's really going on. Some of it is maybe tobacco settlement endowment trust earnings money, TSET earning funds, which are over $40 million a year.
OCPA Impact also recommends eliminating state sponsorship of NBA games and non-critical travel, saving $39.8 million, and using savings from employee health insurance for raises for teachers.
The floor on that is estimated at about another $100 million a year. That's set to kick in, as we understand it, October 1st of this year, and those savings have not been pre-designated in the budget that state lawmakers just passed.
OCPA Impact says the state needs to focus on long-term solutions, especially with another massive budget deficit and deeper cuts looming.
It doesn't look promising, so it's scary.
In Oklahoma City, Aaron Brilbeck, News 9.
Aaron mentioned the 1% sales tax hike for education. Our poll shows nearly 2/3 of all Oklahoma voters support the idea, while the remaining third say the state needs to find other ways to address the teacher shortage and low teacher pay.
This year, with pay raises for teachers in South Dakota, Oklahoma will fall to second to last in the nation in average teacher pay. As Dana Hurtnicki reports, it's an issue that's led to a severe teacher shortage in our state.
You laminate them. And
Over the past 30 years as a teacher, Jane B. has collected a lot of stuff.
And you need lots of pens.
She's currently a teacher in Edmond. Her daughter-in-law is a first-year teacher in Plano, Texas.
She just started teaching this year in Plano, and she's actually making more than I am.
How much more?
About $11,000.
It's unfortunate because we're better in Oklahoma than that.
Alicia Priest is a former teacher and current president of the Oklahoma Education Association. She says the last time legislators gave teachers in Oklahoma a pay raise was in the 2008-2009 school year.
2008-2009, our beginning salary for a entry year teacher was $31,600, and for 2016-17, the beginning salary for a teacher is going to be $31,600.
And while lawmakers this year were quick to blame low oil prices and OPEC for failing to increase education spending, Priest points to North Dakota, another oil state that managed to sock away more than $614 million for schools when times were good. In the 8 years since Oklahoma teachers received a raise, oil production in the state doubled and prices exceeded $100 per barrel before tumbling last year.
We haven't made education a priority in funding. We just haven't. We've given corporate tax breaks. We've given oil and gas breaks. We had an opportunity to really look at those things and make changes. It didn't happen.
Teacher pay in Oklahoma is not very good, so I was working 3 jobs at some time throughout the year.
Amy Teetsort was a teacher at Tulsa's Union Public Schools, but this summer, when one of those part-time jobs offered her a full-time position, Amy made the difficult decision to leave a career she loved.
In the 3rd grade is when I decided that was my calling. I had an amazing 3rd grade teacher, and from there on out, that's just what my passion was.
Amy is like the legions of other teachers who are leaving the profession or the state in search of higher paying jobs. Last year, Oklahoma issued 1,000 emergency teacher certifications, allowing college graduates to teach without a teacher certification. But Amy says she would consider going back to teaching if things changed. Dana Hurtnicki, News 9.
A report out this month contends real teacher pay in Oklahoma is higher than people think. The limited government group 1889 Institute says when pay is adjusted for cost of living, Oklahoma jumps from 48th in the nation to 30th. That's because Oklahoma has the 49th lowest cost of living. You have to move to Mississippi to live cheaper. Another analysis shows a new teacher starting in Dallas will make less than starting in Oklahoma because of the cost of living difference. It says failing to point that out is actually driving more teachers out of the state. The Oklahoma Education Coalition says 17% of new teachers here in Oklahoma will leave the state or the profession in their first year. Now, Pittsburgh County's Jason McMullen actually stayed in the profession.
He did. He spent more than a year teaching in Oklahoma towns like Carnegie and Stigler. He even came back to Oklahoma after a stint in Dallas, but he says he just couldn't make it here. So today, he calls Arkansas home. Alex Cameron reports.
The situation in Oklahoma doesn't seem like it's ever going to get better, and so for me it comes down to my family. I got to provide for my family what I got to do.
It turns out just 20 miles from the Oklahoma line in the boom town of Springdale, Jason says he has found the place he's always been looking for but could never quite find in the Sooner State.
Well, you start looking at the growth. You start looking at the teachers' salaries, you start looking at the benefits, you start looking at the way that the community supports them, and you start going, wow, this is the kind of environment that you kind of dream of as a teacher.
Jason's making $16,000 more than his last job in Sulphur, but he says it goes beyond a paycheck to the way he's treated as a professional.
If there's a challenge that comes up, I know that somebody has my back, that somebody is going to help me do the best that I can because we're all in it for the same reason, and that is student success.
Oklahoma also has a new Teacher of the Year today.
It's Oklahoma Teacher of the Year, make sure I have this right, is Stephen Smallwood of Oklahoma.
After 27 years of guiding Oklahoma students in Perry, Lawton, and Broken Bow in debate, speech, and theater, English, geography, and journalism, Stephen began looking at retirement. But after all those years, his salary maxed out at a paltry $26,000. He pointed his truck south, and when Oklahoma's one-time Teacher of the Year crossed the Red River, he got a raise.
$10,000.
For 10 more years, Stephen drove to North Lamar High School in Paris, Texas, so that he might have some financial peace of mind. And less than a year after he retired in Texas, we followed him back to a welcome that speaks of what Oklahoma lost.
Does everybody get this kind of welcome? No.
It broke Stephen's heart to cross the Red River.
I miss you.
But look at the legacy played out in hugs.
Look at you. What are you doing?
He left after a decade in Texas. A state line's invisible.
I'm coming.
This kind of respect is not.
See y'all in a little while.
This is what every teacher strives for, what every student and parent hopes for. Oklahoma had it and lost it.
When I drove across to make a living, I left dreams and visions. My dreams and visions were left in Oklahoma.
Alex Cameron, News 9.
Stephen was class of '66 at Rattan High School. His dad was principal. 5 brothers and sisters came after, and all became teachers.
Still to come, working to make both students and teachers successful in the classroom. The vital but often missing link that's holding them back.
And with so many teachers leaving the state, what are schools doing to attract new teachers? Next, the new idea paying off at one of the state's largest districts.
Would you encourage a family member or friend to pursue a career in education? Our News 9 poll found more than half of you would. The teacher shortage has districts competing for staff, and it's especially tough for the state's largest districts in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, where it takes dozens of hires just to keep up with attrition.
And that's leading one of those districts to try a new approach, hiring faster and hiring early. Lacey Lowry reports.
The teachers in these seats could soon be in front of a classroom in Tulsa. The district created a hiring system that can take a candidate from first interview to final offer in a matter of hours.
It did make a little bit of a difference knowing I could leave here today and know I have a job, and that would be a really big relief instead of having to wait for schools who say they're going to call you and then they don't call you.
Katie Hale moved to Tulsa from Nakoma Park, where she taught for 2 years. She looked around for openings but says smaller districts didn't have many as they downsized staff to match their budget.
I guess what draws me to them is just the fact that there's more opportunities here than in the smaller districts. With the budget cuts and everything right now, a lot of the smaller districts just aren't hiring.
Tulsa Public Schools didn't have as many openings as usual, but didn't have as many applicants either.
So even though the applications are down, the number of vacancies are also down. That's our silver lining.
In Oklahoma City, the district adapted to the chronic shortage with constant hiring.
It's having a huge impact. I mean, this is why we're always out there searching.
Meyer says the district competes with suburbs on salaries, but still has teachers leave to work out of state. They're especially short in a few areas.
Special ed, math and sciences. These are very difficult categories to fill when it comes to teachers, and so those are areas that we're always recruiting for.
Bradley Eddy is in charge of hiring for Tulsa. He says the turnover of teachers forced the school district to create a new model for hiring, with faster paperwork and instant interviews to qualify candidates. And the final test?
It's a little nerve-wracking, but yes, I am prepared to teach a lesson on the letter O. A vowel is a letter that has 2 sounds, but we're only going to learn 1 sound today.
Hale went through the process from introductions to teaching a sample lesson in a single morning. There is a chronic shortage of available teachers. Some blame the pay or the work, but the man in charge of hiring in Tulsa says public respect is part of the reason people go into teaching or decide to do something else.
Teaching is still a great profession. Teaching is fulfilling and satisfying. It doesn't always, it doesn't get the same respect from the community, I believe, that it used to get, but it still fully deserves that, and I think that that pendulum will probably swing back.
Lacey Lowry, News 9.
As class sizes grow, students get less individual attention. and could be more likely to fall through the cracks.
Whatever the reason, it's a significant problem. Year before last, more than 3,600 Oklahoma students dropped out of school. But what about children being pushed out through suspensions? Carl Torp looks at whether parents can help prevent that.
At the same time,
high school math and physics teacher Andrew Smith says the demands of teaching and maintaining order are exhausting.
it's so integrated really that it's hard to separate the two. You know, I teach and behavior manage at the same time, and that's probably why I'm so tired at the end of the day, is because I've done both simultaneously all day long.
It's a challenge many teachers say is increasing and causing schools to reconsider how they handle behavior. Tulsa is one district moving away from the idea of sending students out of the classroom.
Of course we want to see suspensions come down. We want to see behavior referrals come down. We want to make sure that teachers have the tools in their classrooms so that they are not sending students to the office as often.
Dr. Kathy Siebold heads a new effort to help teachers resolve issues with students before it escalates into a suspension, in part by informing parents early when there's a problem and encouraging them to come in and work it out.
We have to get really good at providing those opportunities and making sure that the parents understand that we do want them in the building. We do want them to be a part of the education process. It's critical to education that parents be involved.
But schools and PTA groups find parents aren't as involved as children reach upper grades, a trend they'd like to turn around.
There's a misconception, I think, that when some parents feel that if they're too nosy or too involved with their school or their children's schoolwork, that they feel like they're a helicopter parent.
Allison Taylor is the parent of 3 children in Moore Public Schools, and she's a recruiter for the PTA.
Always know your teacher or your kids' teachers, even if it's middle school and high school. I think it's important for them to know that you are a parent and you do care.
Dr. Ebony Johnson has spent the last 3 years as a high school principal, and in that role sometimes suspended students.
And it didn't matter if we gave them 5 to 10 to 15 days out of school. They truly were not, the behaviors were not changing as a result of us sending them home.
After making a concentrated effort to engage parents to improve student behavior, she's a believer that parents are key.
And I truly believe it changed the parental component piece, the culture of our building in that regard. Parents knew that we expected them to come in. The correspondence that I sent out stated that we can't have school successfully unless you're in the building.
And for this math teacher, Andrew Smith, relief would be welcome.
The hardest part of teaching is classroom management.
He's now a believer that teachers working with parents and students can solve most problems without suspending students. Carl Torp, News 9.
Teaching to pass a test. It can be stressful for teachers and overwhelming for students.
Ahead, cutting the number of required tests in half. And next, the new federal program that's giving more control of Oklahoma schools to state and local leaders, plus how you can have your voice heard. Who do you think does the best job overseeing our schools? Our exclusive poll shows an overwhelming 72% of you believe it's the local school districts, with the state and federal government a distant second and third. Oversight is a major point of contention. The feds eliminated the No Child Left Behind Act late last year.
In its place, the Every Student Succeeds Act, which gives the state more control. And now education leaders are trying to break down what this new mandate means for Oklahoma. Just before school started this year, Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister spent 8 days traveling across our state for the Engage OK Education Conference. And the new Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, was a big part of the discussion. Hoffmeister says ESSA removes the requirement for Oklahoma to seek an annual waiver from burdensome federal mandates, but it still requires state-led testing in grades 3 through 8 and high school, plus a state-designed school accountability system. The biggest change here is control. Unlike No Child Left Behind, the new law transfers the bulk of education policy and decision-making back to state and local control.
I know it's easier for parents to talk to a local school leader and a local legislator at the Capitol.
it's impossible to talk to people in Washington, D.C. and see a difference be made.
Now the Oklahoma Department of Education is asking for your help.
I would like to invite you to be part of a vital process, one that will shape the educational experience and outcomes of Oklahoma students for years to come.
The department is calling out to parents, educators, administrators, students, and community members to take part in a survey
about what our public schools should do and be. This is your opportunity for meaningful impact that will frame accountability and school culture policy for every Oklahoma student.
The 17-question survey asks you to weigh in on how the state should measure things like student progress, accountability, how the state can help low-performing schools, and teacher certification.
And they've said, states, you decide what it takes for a teacher to be certified and in a classroom. And in a state like ours where we've got 1,000 teacher shortage, we need that flexibility.
The survey is also a chance for the community to suggest how federal dollars should best be invested in Oklahoma schools. Superintendent Hoffmeister says that will be one of the greatest impacts. For example, Hoffmeister says, quote, states will now be able to determine the most appropriate research-based plan to address school improvement and student support for Oklahoma students. This is different from the old one-size-fits-all approach of no child left behind, end quote. Once the survey phase is complete, a first draft of the new ESSA plan is expected sometime in October. There will be additional opportunities for community feedback in November. A second draft of the plan is expected by February 2017. The governor will review it before the plan is sent off to the U.S. Department of Education for approval. And if you'd like to participate in the survey, we've linked it to news9.com.
For years, the sheer amount of standardized testing in schools caused controversy, but that changed with the Every Student Succeeds Act Amanda was just talking about. State lawmakers are now using this new opportunity to take a bare-bones approach to testing.
Read the question. The biggest issue with testing is that we were doing it for purposes beyond what's best for students.
Many people might say that Oklahoma students and teachers were forced to bite off more than they could chew.
Well, it puts a great deal of stress on the student because the students understand that these are high-stakes tests. Everybody knows a teacher who's sort of reached the point of burnout.
Think of past testing requirements like building a sandwich. The No Child Left Behind Act required federal testing in schools. That's the bread. As the stakes changed, the states upped the ante, and instead of just toast for lunch, now students needed something more substantial, so Oklahoma added its own requirements. Then the sandwich became more involved when districts added their toppings, their own layer of testing requirements. In the end, students were taking up to 36 tests before graduation. Now we're going back to toast.
This year, we will only be giving assessments that are federally required.
The new state testing requirements mean each Oklahoma student will only need to take 18 tests plus a college readiness test like the SAT or ACT before graduation. And that cuts the requirements almost in half. And educators say that's a change that could steer Oklahoma students in the right direction.
Now we're going to focus on learning, and then we're going to measure that. But we don't need to do that over and over.
What this does is it frees up the classroom time to be spent doing what the teacher knows is going to be best for the students.
So what tests will your child need to take to graduate? Students will still begin testing in 3rd grade. Each year until 8th grade, students will be required to take one test in math, one test in English/language arts, that's 12 tests. Students will also take science tests in 5th and 8th grade, and in high school, students will have to take one math, one in English, one science, and one U.S. history test before they take their college readiness SAT or ACT.
What we want is for a return of focus on the foundations of learning, and then let's examine that with a snapshot of how students are doing in the spring.
These new tests will ultimately be designed by Oklahoma educators, and leaders in the field see them as an opportunity.
Having been given local control, we can create some assessments that really reflect what parents and educators and other stakeholders in education think are important content knowledge and important skills for learners to have. Then if we're teaching to the test, it's really not such a bad thing.
Still ahead, the critical role science, technology, and engineering and math play when it comes to a job
versus career and the state's economy.
But up next, a tale of 3 cities. How Oklahoma's diversity makes solving the education crisis even more of a challenge. With nearly 1,800 schools in our diverse state, the issues in one part of Oklahoma figure to be very different than in others.
Justin Doherty travels across the Sooner State to get a closer look.
From the Panhandle to Green Country, Oklahoma's 500-plus school districts serve over 680,000 students. No matter the size or the socioeconomics, each district graded on the same scale.
They're wanting one solution for everybody, and that solution doesn't fit everybody.
At least one national assessment has found when students were given the same tests, an A student in a high-poverty school would be about a C student in a low-poverty school. And the number of free or reduced lunches in a school is often associated with poverty.
What blood type is this?
So from Jinx
I'll play those guitars.
to Duncan.
We are playing the game.
You're drafting one.
And to Hugo.
They're not qualifying that they're different districts with different needs and different problems.
3x to the third.
First implemented in 2012, the state's A through F report card is made up of 2 distinct factors: student performance and student growth. The state education department says it's, quote, merely a communication tool that lets parents and communities know how local schools are performing. But a high grade could mean grants from the state, a low grade, professional development, improvement plans, and likely more state oversight.
I think we definitely need less government.
Superintendent of Jinx Public Schools, Stacy Butterfield.
There are times that the government gets in the way of what educators, many, if not most, have spent a lifetime focused on.
Butterfield's Tulsa area district is often seen as the top in the state. With over 11,500 students, 37% are on free or reduced lunches, well below the state's average of 62%. The state report card gives Jinx High School an A-, the middle school a B-.
But all in all, if our community wasn't happy with what we are doing or didn't feel like they had a voice or didn't feel like they had an opportunity to contribute, I don't think we would be producing the results that our students and our staff produce.
So Butterfield and staff members like elementary principal Susan Lair want to do away with state tests and create their own tests, ones that meet their district's needs.
The testing itself, it just takes enormous time away from teaching and learning.
Jinx, like most in the state, administers 35 state-mandated tests in one school year, grades K through 12.
It's stressful. So, we teach kids how to bubble in on a bubble sheet, and that's not how we do school every day. Let's allow, local districts to have local control about how they determine whether students are making growth.
The Jinx staff isn't alone.
When we have mandates and accountability that's coming from people who don't understand our particular needs, it's not helpful to us. In fact, it's detrimental.
Melanie Hugh is heading into her 2nd year as superintendent for Duncan Public Schools.
This is Americana, and people are very proud of that.
That pride often trickles down to school involvement.
We have a strong mentorship program here.
But the time to have those guest speakers is now harder to find.
Instead of innovation, we've turned to compliance.
In the state's report card, Duncan High School has a C, the middle school a D-. Over 3,700 students make up the Duncan district. 55% are on free or reduced lunches.
Our schools that have a higher number of free and reduced lunch students, we struggle on our report card grade.
Hugh points to one Duncan elementary school as an example. Over 95% of students at Woodrow Wilson Elementary are on free or reduced lunches. That school's grade is a D-, just recently raised from an F.
Oftentimes we are trying to just meet basic needs for kids.
Principal Lisha Elroy sees many of her students come to school hungry and tired. So to comply with the state's assessment, Elroy and the district have taken unwanted measures.
We have implemented here at Woodrow Wilson some benchmark assessments to prepare our kids, because we feel like if we don't do that, there's major meltdowns on testing week and testing day.
You have to beat tests with more tests.
We do, that's right. And so then we start to feel like, our kids are just being tested to death. We are playing the state's game.
While that game is being played for at least one school in Duncan,
You're trying to come up with something to make Hugo better.
one entire district has to use nearly the same playbook.
Is it an issue in Hugo?
Just minutes from the Texas line in the southeast pocket of the state, Hugo. A small school with a diverse culture. With 1,100 students in the district, 91% have free or reduced lunches. Both the high school and middle school are failing the state's report card. English teacher Heather Samus has been in the district for 6 years.
We're not different than any other district. We do have some teachers maybe that are a little below par or maybe need some extra professional development, but I'm not blaming it on the teachers either. We're fighting kids coming in hungry because they haven't eaten. We're fighting kids coming in, they've missed a week because they couldn't make it to school because they had to stay with an aunt over the weekend and then the parents left them there and they had no way back to Hugo.
Even State Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister sees the report cards as a flawed system. In 2014, she ran a campaign on getting rid of the report cards. In one report, she's quoted as saying, "We are meeting our obligation and are looking forward to a time when we have a better system, but it will require a legislative change."
Citizens stepping up to make sure Oklahoma schools are the best they can be. And next, a new focus on teaching Oklahoma's future innovators and pioneers, how STEM is changing your child's education.
The U.S. Department of Education says only 16% of American high school seniors are proficient in math or even interested in a related career.
So a statewide program called Project Lead the Way is trying to grab kids' imaginations early, saying it could transform Oklahoma's economy.
As Robin Marsh shows us now, it focuses on learning science, technology, engineering, and math, together known as STEM.
It's not your typical classroom lesson.
See where that black wire goes to where? The outside of that main board. There you go.
These middle schoolers are testing out the robot remote control cars
Try it again.
that they've built themselves.
We've tested everything.
It's learning that focuses on problem solving by thinking outside the box.
Studies show that students' favorite method of learning is by far and away through hands-on projects. And that's why educators say programs like Project Lead the Way are so successful.
Students want time to grapple with a real-world problem. They don't want to sit in a desk and listen to the teacher lecture.
Dr. Kathy Dodd is the Associate Superintendent at Union Public Schools. She says her district is the first in Oklahoma to implement Project Lead the Way education to every student in the system, K through 12. It's a program that's exploding in the Sooner State. About 80 different schools, district, and vocational centers across Oklahoma use the curriculum. From specialized charter schools like Dove Academy in Oklahoma City to larger districts like Norman Public Schools. What sets Project Lead the Way apart from other STEM education programs is its focus on preparing students for a career in the industry.
It's not just about building a robot for building a robot's sake. It's how does this really happen in business and industry?
And it starts young. Union kindergarten students are using engineering skills to build houses that can withstand heavy winds. They don't always succeed, but according to Project Lead the Way philosophy, that's the point, letting students figure out for themselves what works and what doesn't. These are skills that will carry the students into their career. Former Lieutenant Governor Jerry Askins, a STEM education advocate, believes it could transform Oklahoma's economy. Right now, Askins says out-of-state students are getting the tech and engineering jobs that could be staying local.
A lot of those positions end up being filled by students coming from other states because we have not generated that base of interest in our own students. And programs like this can help us grow our own future workforce.
Now that state lawmakers cut public textbook funding, Union now relies on grants and bond money to pay for Project Lead the Way.
My hope is that our state government's able to see the value, they listen to business and industry, and they see what STEM is able to offer our students, and they're able to find a way to invest in STEM curricula.
Robin Marsh, News 9.
And we have a list of all the districts and schools that use Project Lead the Way It's on our website right now, news9.com.
With funding tight, education foundations from one side of the state to the other are having a positive impact. They're made up of volunteers, parents, and business owners who raise money to fund school requests, like the one from Charles Page High School teacher Daniel Schmidt. Here's our Stan Miller.
When Daniel wanted to show the kids how aquaponics works, he turned to the Sand Springs Education Foundation for a $4,000 grant.
It's groups like the foundation that puts extra stuff like this that kids get to use and see that they wouldn't just see in a normal classroom.
In a state that lags behind every other state in the country in just about every key education measurement, local foundations are a rare bright spot.
We have more privately funded local foundations helping our public schools, towns all across America and cities than any other state per capita in the nation. We're number one.
Today, there are 223 of them across the state, from the largest in Oklahoma City and Tulsa to the smallest in Ninnekah. Karen Rose's job is to help them get started and nurture them along the way.
And they want to promote excellence. They want to encourage innovation in their community and with the teachers and show support for them in that way.
But it's never enough. No foundation can satisfy all that needs to be done in any Oklahoma school system, but it feels good to try. It's just too important not to.
People want to be involved in something they feel like where they could make a difference.
Starting young. Up next, the big difference in early childhood education makes in a student's journey through school and the acclaim Oklahoma is getting. In addition to education foundations, Oklahoma is a national leader in another area, early childhood education.
Advocates say everyone deserves a fair chance to achieve their dreams, and it should start well before the first day of traditional school. Here's our Lisa Monahan.
In a state that consistently brings up the national rear in adequately funding the education of its young people, these 4-year-olds are extremely lucky to be Oklahoma 4-year-olds.
You won't find a child here that doesn't feel success. They love it. They're here and they're learning, and we can measure that.
These Sand Springs children are among the more than 40,000 Oklahoma 4-year-olds taking advantage of a year of free, high-quality pre-kindergarten taught by certified teachers. 73% of the state's 4-year-olds are in 99% of the state's school districts. What looks like child's play is so much more. Their vocabulary is expanding, their listening skills growing, they're learning direction, interaction, and self-control skills. They won't just enter kindergarten better prepared, but an established body of research shows they will enter adulthood years from now better positioned to stay out of prison, earn higher salaries, and enjoy a greater quality of life. Lori Painter leads this class.
Whenever you see their light bulb finally go off, they just get so excited, and it's amazing to witness.
And that excitement is not just a flickering light bulb moment, but can be measured initially on a 3rd grade assessment test.
And you see a marked difference between the performance of kids that don't access early childhood and the kids that do.
Nationally, research tells us how impactful intervening early is and how effective early childhood education can be.
Stephen Dow is the director of Tulsa's Community Action Project, one of Oklahoma's largest anti-poverty agencies, and a partner with the Tulsa Union and Sand Springs school districts in providing enhanced birth to 4-year-old education that includes enrichment and parent training for families.
If we get the kids off to a right start, will dramatically shift the odds in their favor so that when they grow up and want to have children of their own, their children are not born into a low-income household.
Since it was first offered in 1998, Oklahoma has become a national trendsetter in early childhood education, the 2nd state to offer and generously fund universal 4-year-old classes, and still ranked among the top 5 states nationally for access to them.
In states that make it a priority to educate our youngest children, like Georgia or Oklahoma, studies show students grow up more likely to read and do math at grade level, graduate high school, hold a job, form more stable families of their own. We know this works.
3 years ago, when President Obama pitched Congress for a national early childhood program to mimic Oklahoma's, Norman Susan Bumgarner was sitting in the First Lady's box. She was there to represent Oklahoma's commitment to its youngest children. Bumgarner is in her 24th year working with them at Oklahoma City's Wilson Arts Integration Elementary School.
It's easier for them to learn at this age, the things that, the behavior and the beginning academic skills, it's easier for them to learn now. And I want that for them, but they deserve it.
Still, early childhood classes are not immune to the state's crippling budget cuts. And that remains a lingering worry for those who've nursed their success.
One cannot till the soil and plant the seeds and do the initial watering and then walk away and expect that we're going to harvest a flourishing crop.
Lisa Monahan, News 9.
Educate Oklahoma is just scratching the surface as we identify the bright spots and discuss the tough issues we face today.
Straight ahead, the hope and change we're finding elsewhere in the country and on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean.
Change. Change is a buzzword that always seems to be at the beginning, middle, and end of most every conversation about Oklahoma schools.
So what does change look like? Many point not to just outside our state, but also outside our country. Here again is Justin Doherty.
Many countries do things different than Oklahoma, but none may be more different than Finland. Just one test is mandated, and it's only for high school seniors.
Tiedättekö maailman kaunein?
Each and every school held accountable by its own school board, made up of its teachers, students, and parents. Finland also ranks as the #1 education system in Europe and at the top in the world. Countless experts give the Finnish approach an A, at a time our own state scores itself a D+.
In the United States, Iowa has long been synonymous with quality education. It's the birthplace of not only the Iowa Public Skills Test, but also the ACT, which measures students' readiness for college. But in recent years, Iowa's standards began to slip, and the state looked for innovative solutions. The answer, they believe, is funneling more money and more power to teachers. Their system is inspiring our own superintendent to push the legislature for change.
We'll bring you those stories when we see you back here tomorrow night at 7 o'clock as Educate Oklahoma continues.
It's part of our statewide initiative on television, online, and through social media to support education here in the Sooner State. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to join us for News 9 at 10.
Educate Oklahoma has been presented by Jim Norton Toyota.
The State Board of Education met today to cut tens of millions of dollars from its budget.
These cuts will impact every district and every child in the state.
There is a painful reality, and that is what
we've been reporting on, some pretty drastic cuts that school districts are preparing for.
Bigger class sizes are something that we feel like is probably inevitable.
You have to pile kids in classes, basically.
The focus on tests, many tests.
We need more of our students graduating. We need more of them graduating better prepared.
It seems like things are going to get a lot worse before they get any better.
I think it's time to hit the reset button.
Save our schools! Save our schools!
The State Board of Education met today to make cuts, and those cuts ran deep.
A lot of programs going to be affected.
Budget cuts, forced layoffs.
Educators are so fed up with the way things have been going.
A lot of our teachers feel like they're being picked on.
Children, our students, are the real casualties of this crisis.
We have got to put a stop to the bleeding.
We have to keep going. We have got to get it right.
Educate Oklahoma, presented by Jim Norton Toyota.
Good evening and welcome to night 2 of our look at education in our state.
Last night we looked at the current state of Oklahoma's education system, diving deeper into why things aren't working as well as many people think they should.
Everything from our ongoing budget crisis to parental involvement, the controversial A through F grading system, and also mandates our schools are forced to implement.
Tonight we shift our focus to making things better. We look at how our state compares to others in the region in per pupil spending, and also examine how states like Iowa are ranking much higher than we are.
But first, we head all the way across the Atlantic to Finland. Our Justin Doherty shows us why many world education experts say their system holds many possible answers.
Trust that people want to do good. People want to manage in life. They want to learn and they want to go somewhere in their life. So if you give out trust, you gain more.
Far from the oil fields of Oklahoma, where instead of the wind sweeping down the plains, European cruise ships dock at the port. Welcomed by an assembly of tents at Market Square, and instead of borders shared with Texas and Kansas, Sweden and Russia fill the gaps left by the Baltic Sea. Helsinki, Finland, an energetic capital for the Nordic country of over 5 million people, comparable in size to Minnesota. While the modern core serves as the hub for commerce, it's complemented by the city's historic edge, Senate Square. Anchored by the 160-year-old Evangelical Lutheran Cathedral, tourists from around the world come to snap a picture of the most photographed building in Finland. Even as night falls, the culture of the country is clear. The Finnish take pride in their freedom, embrace equality, and dare to be different. Even in the classroom. Finland has been crowned the rock star of education, shooting to stardom in 2000 when it ranked top 5 in the world in math, science, and literacy. Still to this day, Finnish students rank at the top in Europe. But what can Oklahoma learn from a country that hates tests and whose teachers aren't evaluated? That's exactly why we traveled over 5,000 miles. It's been a long road for Finland to get to the top of the education world. After declaring its independence from Russia in 1917, it wasn't until the 1960s and 70s there was a national effort to raise the standards of education.
So it's social innovation and also for all our kids in order to have the same opportunities than all have.
Based on quality.
Yep.
Aulis Pitkala is the Director General for the Finnish National Board of Education, an appointed position equivalent to a state superintendent. He's been in the Finnish system for years at various levels. He sums up the transformation as going from teacher-centered to learner-centered.
The main point is to make the learner more active, take responsibility of his or her own learning, and to activate them, because learning is a funny thing. Joyful thing.
Yes.
It's an adventure, actually.
That adventure is mapped out here. This maze is Finland's education system. From September to June, elementary students and freshmen are together. High school students can pick from general education or dive headfirst into a career. But the backbone to this entire system, trust. How important is trust?
Oh, it's very important. It's one of the basic values that we have. We don't control. We don't have to. We believe that by trusting the teachers, trusting the principals, trusting the education providers, we receive the best quality of education because they are professionals like we are. We don't believe in standardized testing. We don't believe in monitoring the teachers.
Annalie Rautiainen has moved through the ranks in education, first as a teacher, now an administrator. And you did hear her correctly. There are virtually zero mandated tests, zero teacher evaluations, and the oversight is left up to the students, parents, and the teachers themselves.
I'm often asked, well, what do you do if you have a teacher who's not up to standards, to minimum standards, for example? Well, that's why there is a principal at school who will help the teacher to get back on the track and help the teacher, maybe to team the teacher with someone else so that teachers can learn from each other. So you support and you help, but you don't really grade or monitor or demand something. No. It works better.
So we're going to be really looking at who can we exclude.
But grade and monitor can describe our system back home. Factor in the state's A through F report cards.
What letter does that start with?
And the third grade reading test that decides if a student moves on to the fourth grade or is held back. A test that's defended by Oklahoma School Board member Bill Price.
In some schools, 30 or 40% of the kids have gone on to fourth grade without being able to read, and then fallen further and further and further behind, and then ultimately drop out. Now, what are we supposed to do about that? Are we supposed to let that continue from generation to generation?
Finnish officials perceive the test and report cards as more of a stigma for schools.
If you kind of have a system with testing, so actually you are going to get ready for the testing, not for the learning outcomes. What we are trying to avoid is to have ranking lists of schools. Because to think about this equity, it's more fruitful to develop and support than kind of have ranking lists and kind of criticize you.
While the ranking system may be a sharp difference between our two countries,
there is one approach Finland has just now taken that mirrors Oklahoma. The reason for the change may surprise you. That's ahead. We shared some results from our exclusive News 9 poll last night and will continue to throughout this show. We asked how you'd rate the A through F school report cards issued by the State Board of Education. 30% of registered voters said it was fair. 26% were less impressed and called it poor. 23% said good, with 10% saying it was excellent. Finland, a Nordic country of 5 million people and an innovator when it comes to education.
So it's social innovation and also for all our kids in order to have the same opportunities than all have.
Finland's equivalent to a state superintendent says learning shouldn't be all about studying.
Learning is a funny thing, joyful thing.
Yes.
It's an adventure, actually.
We traveled the 5,000 miles to learn more about what the Finnish have tried and how it could work back home in Oklahoma. We've touched on the drastic difference in how Oklahoma schools are ranked and the lack of ranking in Finland.
the list of differences continues, but there is one similarity that Finland is adopting this year. Justin Doherty shows us that's in part because Finland's world ranking has been falling.
Since Finland exploded onto the world stage in 2000 as one of the top education systems in the world, the test scores for Finnish students have been on a steady decline on the International PISA test, a test taken every 3 years by 15-year-olds all over the world. Out of about 70 countries, Finland ranked either first or second in math, reading, and science in 2000, 2003, and 2006. But in 2009 and 2012, Finland fell slightly in every category, ranking as high as 5th in the world in science and down to as low as 12th in math. To compare, U.S. has ranked at or below average in every category since 2000. In 2012, the most recently released results, the U.S. ranked 17th in reading, 20th in science, and 27th in math. While Finland still remains the top-performing country in Europe, critics argue the golden years in Finland are now over, and the top results in 2000 were just a flash in the pan.
Well, we haven't been kind of rehearsing for the PISA, like they have done in Shanghai or in Singapore or in that Asian countries. So we've been doing our job as good as we can. So it's not a competition for us.
Still, Finland has implemented changes.
We thought that we shouldn't change anything because it's working quite well.
The world is changing very rapidly right now, so we cannot leave the schools to be isolated from the real world. And children's lives have changed.
As the head of early childhood education, Annalie is now leading the effort to introduce an early childhood curriculum that is more similar to Oklahoma's highly praised early childhood program. In our state, children can begin a structured plan at birth, but are upgraded to a different plan at 4 years old. Finnish children traditionally have not started school until they were 7 years old. Now, starting with the 2016-17 school year, Finnish children could start the learning process as early as 9 months old.
Learning through play is one of the key issues in the coming curriculum. It seems to be very exciting to sort of build a learning path from the very beginning, growing as a human being and as a citizen. That's the main core, growing as a human being. Of course, we have the subjects there. We still teach subjects, but transversal skills are embedded in each subject also, so that in every subject the teacher has to make sure that the children learn these transversal, we could call them 21st century skills.
As a socialist country, every family is entitled to daycare, and around 97% of parents take advantage of the opportunity. That's where this new curriculum will be carried out. Then at age 7, that's when the maze begins. For many schools in Finland, like this one, students ages 7 to 16 are all under the same roof, but they don't consider elementary, junior high, or freshman. Instead, it's just comprehensive school. The reason, so teachers can collaborate and students can mature. With hardly any private schools in Finland, each and every comprehensive school is made up of students in its own neighborhood. To help students mature, there's constant interaction between students. Group tasks are often encouraged and initiated by arranging desks in groups of 3 to 4. Students from different grade levels will even work together. For example, first and second graders will spend about 2 hours a day together in class. And they're led by teachers like Peter Riello.
If you're very content orientated, it probably means that you forget the skills, or they don't get the deserved attention. But if you're skill orientated and wisely use your content, practicing these skills, then you get the both. And my question is, which one is more valuable?
Why do you believe the skills are more important?
Well, if I think about how many facts I remember from my comprehensive education, the answer to your question is quite obvious.
Peteri has spent time in America consulting with school districts in a handful of states, most recently Virginia. What became obvious to him, American education is based on content and testing. Much different than the broad Finnish curriculum that encourages students to decide what's next.
6th grade, you have speech, that practice that. After that, we go crazy. Which is, we wildly, plan what kind of things we could do with the kids. We ask them, and that's how we plan a project. Whereas what I saw in Virginia is that they have to, it's more detailed in the curriculum that these things need to be done, content level and, skill level, where you have very little freedom of, just going nuts and crazy, which is the best thing in Finland.
So you would describe it as Finnish teachers are just allowed to go nuts?
Oh yeah, I can go nuts any day. The curriculum is so broad. If my going crazy is high quality, then I can do it. And I can be free. And that's the greatest thing.
The curriculum is often praised by Finnish teachers for being broad and allowing them to create. Oklahoma teachers say they want that as well, but often feel restrained by tests. How Finnish teachers feel about all of the tests we have coming up.
Some more results from our exclusive education poll. We asked who is most responsible for Oklahoma ranking 48th out of 50 states. 35% of registered voters say the state legislature is to blame. 24% blame parents. Federal government is third with 12%, and 10% say local school administrators.
The world is changing very rapidly right now, so we cannot leave the schools to be isolated from the real world. And children's lives have changed.
Finland's head of early childhood education is leading an effort to introduce an early childhood curriculum. It'll be similar to the highly praised one in our state. Interaction between students is also important. Bottom line, teachers are given more creative license than here in the U.S.
Curriculum is so broad that if my going crazy is high quality, then I can do it and I can be free. And that's the greatest thing.
Finland has a test that's considered that country's ACT or SAT.
It's a national test for college entrance. But as Justin Doherty reports, only half of the high schools are required to take it.
What's your thoughts on the standardized testing? For example, in Oklahoma, we may have more testing than Virginia.
Obviously, being a Finnish teacher, I think that's appalling, to be honest. Just the idea that these standardized tests tell us how good the teachers are or who's the better student and how do you rank the schools and all that ranking, competition, it wears people out. And I saw it firsthand. I was asked, so how are you held accountable? Because it doesn't seem like you're held accountable. And I had to think about it, and I answered that, you know what, I'm trusted to be accountable.
All Finnish teachers have a master's degree in education, a rigorous 5-year program. After reading about the Finnish system extensively, Price decided to travel with us to Helsinki. Do you trust the teachers in Oklahoma?
You do to a certain degree. I hate to say it, you trust 90% of the teachers. If you have 5-year professionals that have gone through a teacher training that is as intense as this one, there's greater trust. It's going to naturally evolve that way.
The training is so extensive for Finnish teachers, one teacher is able to be involved with the same students from 1st through 6th grade. This also factors into the Finnish philosophy, don't compete, collaborate.
We do more of the group thing. Yeah, we talk in the group about the topic. Because we talk about it, then it sticks into my mind a lot better than if I just write it down on a piece of paper.
Students also get to decide what type of classes to take. A variety of classes that range anywhere from woodworking to cooking, all part of the framework to prepare each student for the decision they must make in the 9th grade.
I am confident that I can make the decision. I actually never really even considered vocational school an option because I feel like it has nothing to offer me.
That vocational school is just one of 3 options students have once they finish 9th grade. Once a student finishes the 9th grade, which marks the end of comprehensive school, they get to decide to either go to upper secondary school, 10th grade, or vocational school. About half of students go to upper secondary, the other half or so go to vocational school, and about 1% go to the 10th grade, which is meant for students who just need an extra year. This is what's called an upper secondary school, essentially our sophomore through senior years of high school. Here, students get their general education with an emphasis on either language, science, or math, depending on the school.
Just general knowledge, but this school, as I said, it specializes in languages.
Jeanette Sadikova and her peers typically make the decision to go to upper secondary school because it's the more traditional path for students who want to go to the university. Students will apply to at least 5 different schools based on those specialized fields of study, which can also include areas like arts, gymnastics, and even basketball. Just like every school in Finland, this upper secondary school is controlled by its own school board. The board is made up of about 10 people, the principal, teachers, parents, and students. They meet twice a year.
They tend to have control over the school building. That way, a teacher asking to do something doesn't have to ask some distant administrator. They can just ask the principal. It adds to the morale of the school.
Upper secondary school is also considered the safe option for some.
Here I have more time to think, and then maybe after the school I know what I want to do.
To help each student find that answer, teachers like Heidi Kohi use one simple word: empower.
I think that one of the future skills to be learned at school is to be responsible for your own studies, for your own future, for everything you do in life.
I think it's useful if they feel that they are empowered to learning.
How they're able to so freely empower their students comes back to the core of the Finnish system.
I am trusted. In the beginning of each course, we discuss upon the grading with the students, and we get to decide how the course is going to be, how many tests we will have, or what are the projects that we are going to grade.
For you wanting to do that, did you have to get permission at all?
From who?
I feel that I'm kind of an entrepreneur, working alone, together with many colleagues.
We are allowed to make mistakes. I think that's also a good thing.
Nobody tells me what I should do or what I shouldn't do.
Tapasitte, miten kivi...
Finland is also taking a chance on untying students from the traditional learning environment. Desks and hard plastic chairs are replaced with giant pillows, exercise balls, and bean bags. Students can even listen to music while they take a test or write an essay.
I think it's very important that they feel that learning is for them and not for me.
But for everyone in upper secondary school, one task does loom.
Like lurking behind the corner waiting for all of us, also the teachers.
This is essentially the testing zone, and if you can see behind me right here in red, it reads silence. And that's because students beyond these doors are taking what we refer to as an ACT or SAT. It's their matriculation exam. Technically, this is the nation's only mandated test. It lasts several hours for several days.
You study for like 4 or 5 months and just hope it goes well.
Students use their scores to apply to the university, but the scores are also accumulated and put online without a letter grade or label and attached to each upper secondary school. Still, many argue the matriculation exam is not a mandated test because only half of 18-year-olds take it. The other half go to what's called vocational school. The idea is that if after the 9th grade a student knows that he or she wants to have a career in a particular trade skill, this is the route they take.
They get to study like right away and not wait for 3 years in upper secondary school studying like biology when they want to be a plumber. I think it would be a little bit strange if everybody like went to upper secondary school.
Vocational areas of study range from the wrench and pipes of a plumber to the sewing machine and fabric of a fashion designer. Media, catering, and hair design are also offered in the vast list of studies in vocational school. About 75% of the coursework is in each student's field of choice, the remaining 25% in the core curriculum. There are very few, if any, pen and paper tests. For example, this hair salon. These hairdressers are essentially juniors in high school, and today's haircut could be their midterm exam. In addition to this real-world experience recreated in the school, all vocational students have an extensive apprenticeship program where they often go out into the field and work alongside an employer who's partnered with the school.
Often they said this was really nice, it was really opening my eyes for the education.
Marko Antonin is the head of sector, most similar to a principal, for this vocational school in Helsinki. This is the student store. Everything you see around us made by students and operated by students. Learning how to open and operate their own business is a major piece of their curriculum.
They say it's really motivating for the rest of the studying time.
One common argument Marko hears from international school officials: how can a 16-year-old be ready to make such an important decision to go to vocational school, and that one decision will likely have a lasting impact?
Some of them are not ready, but I think still more than half is quite ready to make the choice. And if they are not ready, they also, of course, can change the field.
Any student can alter their course at any time. If a student wants to attend the university after vocational school, all they'll need to do is pass the matriculation exam. But most vocational students head straight into the workforce, using the skills they've acquired throughout what we consider their sophomore, junior, and senior years of high school.
You could do a project that could raise awareness.
The vocational route may just be the highlight of the Finnish system for Hugo, Oklahoma high school teacher Heather Samus.
These kids are asked to make resumes, they're asked to fill out job applications. Our kids have problems with those kind of things. How about doing that in the classroom?
Do you think that's the core of the reform that needs to happen?
I feel it is. I think we need to give kids other options. You can not go to college and get a job out there and make twice as much as a teacher makes. You don't have to go to college to be successful. And that's our problem, that we're not telling kids that.
What do we do first, do you remember?
Samus isn't alone in the state.
We're finding that we have very good students making it to college and really struggling, sometimes even bailing out in the first year or two. And also we're hearing from local companies that they're having a hard time finding workers that actually want to work. And so it tells me the high school diploma may not be a valuable thing in the sense that they're prepared for life.
Duncan High School math teacher Sam Holte used to be a software developer, but left that field 11 years ago to become a teacher. He wanted to make an impact, but realized the limit of his impact when visiting with a student after class one day.
He said, "Mr. Holte, I don't know why I'm in this class. I just want to be a carpenter." And I got it. He was doing upper level math, something he would not use in carpentry, and he had to break out from his day to be in my class just because he had that credit. He had to have that credit. I would like to say, okay, let's teach you more about carpentry. VOTEC does that, but we can also say, let's show you how to operate a budget.
Benefiting society and creating a better future. That seems to be the universal language.
I think that learning is not based on tests and testing only. It's to give this kind of a sparkle.
For Peter Riello, during his visit to schools in Virginia, one moment in particular stands out. He discovered how low the perception is for teachers in America. Many have written Finnish teachers are highly respected, even compared to lawyers and doctors. And the respect is not based on pay. Finnish teachers get paid 3,500 euros a month, which is about $38,700 a year. And while that's still an amount an Oklahoma teacher with a doctorate won't get until their 10th year teaching, it's not much in Finland compared to the lawyers and doctors they mirror in respect. So the respect comes from that backbone of the Finnish education system. It's been described in books that you are heroic as a teacher. But when you hear someone in Virginia say, I'm just a teacher, what's your response?
Of course, it's sad, and I talked with them about it. Why do you say just a teacher? And what I found out, it all comes down to the trust, the idea that you have to prove yourself all the time to your superiors. I don't have to show proof. They trust me.
But can anything in this wild, vastly different education system actually work in Oklahoma? And what do you want to make sure that Americans understand about it?
Well, freedom. If you want to have a classroom where you take off your shoes and you sit down on the floors and you feel relaxed and you learn better like that, that's freedom.
We need to decontrol the school systems and have the school systems decontrol the classrooms. We also need to help honor the teachers in a million different ways, and especially honor excellence in the classroom. That will add to the trust.
If you are not trusted as an expert, as a teacher, so you get kind of a cynical attitude that then I don't do anything except to be ordered to do something. So it's kind of empower them to do things together. You can't copy the Finnish system. You can't do that because it's so cultural and historical background. I think what you can actually do is try to make the schools as a working places more relaxed, not for testing, for life.
And finally, Finland's culture and economy do play significant roles in its education system, which is why we didn't come here to make a conclusion, but maybe, just maybe, we could start a conversation. In Helsinki, Finland, Justin Doherty, News 9.
Our focus now shifts to the states and where Oklahoma falls when it comes to per-student spending. The numbers speak for themselves. Plus, the downturn in the oil and gas industry takes a bite out of our state's bottom line with education cuts. The big lesson we can learn from North Dakota.
Welcome back. It's often said that so much of our state's economy revolves around money related to oil and gas drilling, and the recent downturn is a big part of what's impacting education. But what if Oklahoma could have planned better? Education experts look to North Dakota for answers. Back in 2010, voters there approved something called the Legacy Fund. It mandated that 30% of oil and gas revenue be set aside in this new fund to be used later. That money can't be touched until at least June of the next year, and there's already more than $600 million of it earmarked for education.
Spending per student is often cited as a good comparison between states when it comes to overall education funding. In our News 9 poll from earlier this month, 65% of registered voters said too little is spent on K through 12 public education in our state. Those results seem to match the data. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Oklahoma ranked 47th out of 50 states and the Washington, D.C. area. Our state spent $8,751 per student. We rank below every neighboring state and significantly under the national average of almost $12,400 per pupil a year. For comparison, Washington, D.C. ranks first, spending nearly $30,000 per student.
But which state actually has the best schools? According to the 2015 Education Week rankings, Massachusetts and New Jersey came in number 1 and 2. Oklahoma ranks 48th out of 51, including Washington, D.C., and was also awarded with a D+. Only New Mexico, Nevada, and Mississippi ranked lower. In the middle of the pack on the list is Iowa at 24th. So why do we bring up Iowa? Leaders there are trying some innovative things to reform their education system, things some in Oklahoma say could work here.
So coming up, we go to Iowa for an inside look at what's happening there and the impact on education. Back to the results from our exclusive News 9 education poll. We asked, to what extent do you agree that public schools could be improved by spending more money in the classroom and less on administration? A whopping 87% say they strongly or somewhat agree that more money is needed in the classroom. Only 8% somewhat or strongly disagree.
Oklahoma voters will decide this November whether to add a 1-cent sales tax dedicated to education.
A big chunk of that money would be set aside for teacher pay raises. But would that be enough to improve Oklahoma schools? As our Terry Hood found out, if you ask folks in Iowa, the answer is a resounding no.
Right here. We're looking for who?
K-pop. At some point in every week in every classroom in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, you'll find 2 teachers. One for the kids, one for the teacher.
Yay! I actually carry with me, we have 6 steps that we're looking for when we meet with teachers to co-plan.
Karen Phillips is what's called an instructional design strategist.
I coach teachers.
She spends time in every classroom in her building once a week, followed by a planning session with the classroom teacher. Together, they review strategy.
And I know that these number strings are a little more complicated.
And look to the week ahead.
Where do you think you might go next with this?
It's all part of Iowa's Teacher Leadership Program, enacted by the legislature just 3 years ago. Ryan Wise is the director of Iowa's Department of Education.
Iowa for decades was the national leader in education excellence.
But when those standards began to slip, the legislature looked for the most effective way to improve education.
Well, Iowa has made a significant financial investment in this.
And decided simply giving teachers raises wasn't enough.
You can throw resources at a school district or a school, and if you do not provide the support and professional learning for the adults in that school setting, then you've wasted your money.
So Iowa put the spotlight on empowering teachers.
It really gets down to boots on the ground, teachers in the classroom.
Their education reform raised the salaries of starting teachers and tied other bonuses to leadership role.
Now, what else is on that list?
In Cedar Rapids, 500 teachers participate in 42 different jobs, covering everything from classroom instruction to building maintenance.
The old system, I had no choice.
Melissa Hawking went from 19 years in the classroom to overseeing the leadership program in 8 buildings.
This gives them another place to grow professionally and another career pathway to go on.
And another way to make more money.
Yeah, very much so.
For Hawking, up to $10,000 a year more.
It definitely is keeping me, in the profession for the long run.
Which is the kind of statement that caught the attention of Oklahoma State School Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister.
We're very encouraged by what has been accomplished in Iowa.
Hoffmeister included the framework for a teacher leadership program as one of her top priorities to the legislature this year. And while it didn't get a lot of attention, it did pass.
That has already been signed by the governor and will be in place starting next year to encourage teachers to stay in the classroom.
Here's the catch. Iowa spends $150 million a year on the teacher leadership program. Oklahoma's legislature didn't allocate any money at all. Still, Hoffmeister believes the Iowa model is the future of education, and she's optimistic the tide is turning.
And I believe there's a new day. People understand that we have a new focus on professional development.
This is the second year for the program, so results are preliminary. But education leaders are excited. And as for the teachers, they say the #1 comment they hear is, "Thank you."
Beyond that, Iowa is also using another new approach, taking the school out of learning. The project now partnering students, businesses, and community leaders after the break.
What does it take to make a school system truly cutting edge?
There are many answers to that question, but one program in Iowa is using an approach that has won it national recognition. They call it simply Iowa Big. Here again are Terry Hood.
This is our main campus, I suppose, is how you think of it.
Sean Cornally is a math and science teacher in a setting that looks nothing like a traditional school. For starters, there really isn't a school.
We really think of the city as our campus.
And the businesses, nonprofits, and entrepreneurs of Cedar Rapids, Iowa are their partners in this experiment built on the idea that a school's curriculum should come from the needs of the community.
You have to find that fuzzy space between is useful to the partner and is academically rigorous for the kiddo.
That fuzzy space covers a lot of ground. It encompasses everything from an art project for a city park, which attracts students like Maya Gonlable.
I love it. I love it. I feel like I learn more here every single day.
To an efficiency study at a local manufacturing plant where math and science skills are honed and tested.
They went out and looked at the technology. They found a low, middle, high solution. They pitched it to myself and my team. They put a budget around it. And they gave us a recommendation on the technology we should go with.
And you're doing it.
We are doing it.
But you took it to mean maybe an actual...
And that real-life application is the key to the whole program. Every single project has to have the backing of someone in the community.
Do you find it rather amazing that some really high-level stuff at your company is being done by a group of high school students?
Yeah, they don't act like high school students.
So I just came down one day and I just fell in love with it right away.
George Ellises went from working in retail jobs after school to running a business putting together pitch proposals for local companies. Matthew Ruda was one of his first clients.
So we actually went to a pitch competition down in Kansas City. It was a global competition and was one of the top 3. And his pitch deck's pretty much the one that got us there.
Does it make a difference to you that these things are real?
Yeah, I think it makes a huge difference. We learn exactly what we need to get the task done. And by applying it to something that's so real world, it's going to help you learn it a lot better.
George says it's also given him a new connection to his hometown, which the folks at Iowa Big are convinced will help them keep their homegrown talent.
We want them to have their heartstrings tied back to our community, and the way we do that is by giving them opportunities during their high school years to grow themselves in ways with experiences that they would have never otherwise had in the traditional academic sense.
Iowa Big is going into its 4th year in the fall, and the hope is to find resources to make it even bigger. Right now it reaches just 100 kids, only a fraction of the students in Cedar Rapids. But the founders are convinced that in this small project are the seeds of something giant.
To me, that's that moment. I don't even care if it's an aquadrome. I don't even care if it's a redesign of a park. It's that combination of feeling what engagement feels like and having an adult care too. That to me, you never lose.
So what's the takeaway from all of this? Coming up, the possible solutions to the education problem plaguing schools across Oklahoma after the break.
We've spent 2 hours over the last 2 nights talking about the importance of education in our state and what we can do to help improve it. So now what?
Experts seem to agree the solutions are a mixture of what we've already talked about: more funding for our schools, better parental involvement, rewarding teachers, and looking elsewhere for innovative ideas. We know these shows really only scratch the surface on this very complicated topic, but it's not something that's going away.
And neither is our commitment to covering education. Over the next several months, we'll continue profiling teachers and students and schools and the things they're all doing to make Oklahoma more successful. We also have so much more posted on our website. In addition to extra interviews from these stories, we also have lesson plans focused on Oklahoma weather, specifically designed for grades K through 12. And we want to keep the conversation going on social media. Just use the hashtag OklaEd.
Thanks so much for joining us these past 2 nights as we aim to better educate Oklahoma. Good night.
Educate Oklahoma has been presented by Jim Norton Toyota.